Coast, we are following some breaking news headlines out in the Middle East. I want you to take a good look at your screen. This is the very latest video as we're following from the Associated Press, Israel's military operation in the Gaza Strip. We're learning it is expanding to seize, quote, large areas. That coming from the defense minister today. Israel's offensive in the Palestinian territory was expanding to crush and clean the area of terrorist infrastructure and seize large areas that will be added to the security zones for the state of Israel. That coming from the defense minister of Israel in a written statement on this Wednesday. Israel's security perimeter, which runs along the border with Israel in northern and eastern Gaza, has been a crucial part of the country's defense for decades, used as a way to protect its citizens living near the territory. A lot to discuss this morning, so we want to bring into the conversation Executive Director of Scholars for Peace in the Middle East, Dr. Asaf Ramarwasky. Dr. Asaf, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me as always.
So a lot of people alarmed by this news. Others feel that it is very needed when we look at the current climate and state of terrorism there in the Middle East. We're looking at the latest of the hostages still in Hamas captivity this morning, as well as the conflict with Hezbollah that has ramped back up out in Lebanon. Could you set the stage for this, quote, ground offensive as we are seeing that the Israeli Defense Forces, they continue to try to find the remaining terrorists in this Gaza area?
Sure. So just to contextualize and to add to your point, obviously, so we've seen since the end of phase one, the Israeli military has been trying to tighten the screws on Hamas and to continue to work to what the Israelis are defining as destroying or basically disrupting the entire military infrastructure capability of Hamas, which they've been doing very successfully. What we've been seeing now, and this is part of the challenge, is that since the phase one ended over a month ago, when we saw the last time when we saw release of hostages, obviously the military operations once again have begun, and that's exactly what you're seeing taking place to now. The concern is, of course, that the timing of all of this. There's about, we're guesstimating 59 hostages that are left. The assumption is that 35 are indeed confirmed dead, and they're, of course, always being used and have been used since the beginning of the war as the pawns and the psychological warfare that this continues. The thought process here, and this is what has been the process that the Israeli defense apparatus has been working with, is that the more pressure there will be on Hamas, militarily speaking, and there'll be more pressure from the Palestinian society to push out Hamas at the same time. We did see over the past week some protests indeed coming out of Palestinian society protesting Hamas, how Hamas abuses them. This has been the largest attempt also to move again, safe zones within the southern part of Gaza, near that famous area of Rafah, which is the border with Egypt, as pressure is coming down on areas of Han Yunis. Again, large swatches of Palestinian populations. And the challenge has been, is as always, how do you disentangle whatever is of the Palestinian population from Hamas? And that's been the ongoing challenge that the Israelis have had. But what you are seeing here is, again, more military ground offensives in order to squeeze the screws on Hamas, knowing that if they don't do something now, Israel will continue. And that goes to the beginning of the main objective of the war, as far as the full dismantlement of Hamas. The question that's coming out of the hostage families and the hostage forum inside of Israel domestically is at the expense of their own families. And that's the concern that they all have, given the fact that we have mounting evidence from released hostages from captivity that every day that they are there in captivity, they are going through hell. I mean, literally the mounting evidence of the abuse, physical abuse, psychological abuse continues on a day-to-day basis. And every time there's something happens, they understand that every day that goes by that presents a clear and present danger for them, especially for those who are still alive.
Dr. Asaf, as we further discuss this breaking news headline, and thank you so much for breaking those details down. This just into our live now from Fox Studio. We have a statement via X, formerly known as Twitter, as the IDF expands their military operation in Gaza. This is from the Israel Defense Minister. It was originally in Hebrew. My producer working hard to get it translated into English for the viewers. It says, quote, "I wish success to the IDF soldiers who are fighting bravely and powerfully in Gaza for the return of the kidnapped and the defeat of Hamas. The goal of Operation Strength and Sword is first and foremost to increase pressure for the release of all the hostages in the face of Hamas's refusal. Expanding the operation this morning will increase the pressure on the Hamas murderers and also on the population in Gaza and advance the achievement of the sacred and important goal for all of us." He goes on to say, "I call on the residents of Gaza to act now to remove Hamas and return all the hostages. This is the only way to end the war," end quote. Could you break that down for us, Dr. Asaf?
Sure. So, I mean, again, none of this has really changed as far as the demands of Israel. I mean, again, if we go back to the beginning of the war back at 10/7, and over the past 17 months that you and I have been discussing all of this, everybody knows that the war could end had Hamas actually returned back the hostages and call it a day, and that would have been a significant carrot to end the war. That has not been, of course, their objective. They use them as their own insurance cards, and they've used them by design in order to basically dangle them literally in front of the state of Israel and in front of Israeli society. They watch everything. They understand the media. They know how to make the impression of what they're doing. There's entire theater. If you go back to how the release of the hostages, every time they've done these theatrics and the ceremonies, at one of them, they actually brought some of the hostages to watch the others being released and to dangle the freedom in front of them, and basically to show the Israelis that we still have the power to make this happen. With the growing mounting pressure that's coming in internally through some of these protests inside of Gaza, which is, again, I think nice to see, but the question really is, does it have teeth to it? And is it another theater of Hamas to try to show that they are, once again, the victims? Or is there actual, true, strong opposition to Hamas within Palestinian society to root them out? There's no doubt that Hamas has been abusing and using Palestinian society, but let's not forget that Hamas also was elected by the Gazan population back in 2006. And so you got to take it with a grain of salt as far as what the objectives are here, as far as the imagery that they're trying to project, while at the same time maintain their lifeline. Let's also not forget that the sole goal of Hamas is to survive all of this and to come out of the tunnels and to basically argue that we are here to stay. For Israel, that's a non-starter. If Hamas survives all of this and is part of any kind of scenario in which the day after tomorrow is discussed, that is considered to be an utter and total failure for the state of Israel, which is, again, part of where the defense minister, Israel Katz, here is making that very point, that they need to continue the pressure and to continue to put pressure on the Israelis. The positive thing that you're also seeing here, that we are, I think that has been an advantage for Israel, is that there is backing of the White House. What we've not seen in the previous administration is that you are seeing support coming in from Washington for Israeli actions. They understand what is actually happening on the ground. But on the other hand, the next step is, and this is again part of the negotiations between Jerusalem and Washington, is that they want to see a case where what the day after tomorrow looks like. And the fundamental question, which is again related to that Rafah border, what are the Egyptians going to do? I mean, let's not forget that there are other partners around the area. The Egyptians have made comments over the past few weeks that now they're willing to take in potentially 500,000. They've increased the numbers. So it's yet to be seen where the Arab actors are going to play into this, if they are truly committed to rooting out and fighting terrorism and Islamism, which is Hamas. And the Egyptians understand that, while at the same time they've been involved also with the interlocutors, with the negotiations as far as the hostages, but they've also been involved with the Qataris. So it's a mixed bag. But there needs to be more support as far as a coalition. Otherwise, and this is the bottom line is that Israel cannot afford to live with Hamas as its neighbor. We've learned that lesson since 10/7. And so the question really still remains for Israel is, what is that entity, if it's not going to be them, that's going to ensure the safety of the Israeli population in the southern part of Israel?
Dr. Assaf, thank you for that breakdown. As we further discuss this latest statement, I want to bring it back on the screen for the viewers. We are getting some questions about part of this statement from the Israel Defense Minister, some confusion where he's calling on the residents in those final sentences there. He says, I call on the residents of Gaza to act now and remove Hamas and return all the hostages. Some concern and confusion from the viewers as to why he would say the residents of Gaza when not everyone living in Gaza is a part of the terroristic organization of Hamas. We're also knowing that, some who are living there, innocent people, they're fearing for their own lives, as many of their family members have been eradicated by Hamas. We also are knowing that they are being used as human shields by Hamas, as you just mentioned. Could you contextualize that, please?
Sure. I mean, this is the unfortunate reality of the war as far as what has been happening since the beginning of the war, as far as the collateral damage that you're seeing take place here. Israel has been fighting urban warfare, and this is a pretty tall task to ask Palestinians who have been relying on Hamas to maintain them economically all around, as far as trying to stand up to Hamas. However, with the current disarray and the fact that Hamas is basically 85 to 90% devastated, and we are seeing more protests, that is to say that these protests that are coming out that we've been seeing, asking, protesting Hamas, that's a positive sign. But the question, as I mentioned before, is what are the actual steps that they're willing to take as far as going to the streets, as far as trying to push Hamas aside and trying to change this current reality? That's not an easy thing to do. There needs to be support to make that happen. Where is that support coming from? Again, that's yet to be seen. And I would argue that the Egyptians can make a dent here if they start helping out their Gazan brethren. Again, Gazans are indeed Egyptians, and if there's a willing to open up and to create more safe zones, the Israelis have been doing that, but with more support with Egypt, that will allow them to basically move whatever is part of the civilian population out of the area as the Israelis cleanse the area, while at the same time there are serious concerns as far as what is the governance body that will emerge, or any kind of body that will be able to govern that society without Hamas being part of it. And so it's harder and harder to see, given the fact that you had also the other day, even the mounting protest in Turkey, while Turkey announced, Erdogan has announced the fact that, the Zionist entity needs to be destroyed, referring to the state of Israel. And so, again, part of this multi-front war against Iran and Iranian proxies, they are still putting pressure on Hamas and on Hezbollah and every one of their proxies that are on their payroll to continue mounting the fight. And that's exactly what Israel is fighting, while at the same time, there are these ongoing day-to-day challenges about, again, disentangling the population from Hamas, such as it is, and that's very complicated because many of them are indeed supportive, even partially, of what Hamas is doing, given what they've been fed for years and years. That's the ongoing challenge, and until we basically clear the deck here as it relates to Hamas. You're still going to be going back and forth here and these military attempts. And the Israelis believe that only military pressure, and some of it does indeed help, is really actually showing that they are willing to go the extra mile in order to move Hamas out of the picture. And this is, the casualties that we're seeing on both ends and the suffering by the hostage families and in the psychological warfare has been going on for over 17 months now. So really, it's mounting pressure, and the abuses is really insurmountable all around.
Dr. Asaf, as you mentioned, clearing the deck of Hamas, that terroristic organization. We just got this operational update into our live now from Fox studio. It says, quote, the IDF and ISA struck Hamas terrorists hiding inside a terrorist command and control center in the area of Jabalia a short while ago. The compound was used by Hamas's battalion to plan terror attacks against Israeli civilians and IDF troops, and served as a central meeting point for the terrorist organization. It goes on to say Hamas systematically violates international law when taking over civilian infrastructure and exploiting the civilian population as human shields. Prior to the strike, numerous steps of surveillance and intelligence were taken to mitigate the risk of harming civilians. It finalizes by saying the IDF will continue to operate against the Hamas terrorist organization and to remove any threat to Israeli civilians. This just further adds to what you just stated, Dr. Asaf, how IDF will not stop until Hamas terrorists are eliminated, but how Hamas has been very strategic, creating these command and control centers, hiding out in areas that might not be in plain sight, and even hiding within areas where Gaza civilians are located.
100%. And that's exactly been the tactic of Hamas. They use every kind of civilian infrastructure, hospitals, schools, and we've seen this in the beginning, civilian neighborhoods, to create and aggrandize the mass destruction, quote unquote, that they want to create by design, by pulling in or pushing in by trying to attract the IDF to come in to create that imagery of mass casualties. I mean, again, Israel is fighting within urban warfare. Israel is doing everything it can and has done a superior job to this, for that matter, as far as notifying the population, moving the population. Every time there's been questions about whether or not the IDF would be able to remove and move around populations, they've been able to successfully do so. No other army does that in the way that Israel has been able to do that when you're talking about such a densely populated area such as Gaza. Jabalia is a hornet's nest and has been a hornet's nest. And the fact that even now, Hamas still has military capabilities and terroristic capabilities, as you mentioned correctly, that are able to harm Israeli civilians represents an ongoing, clear and present danger and existential threat for the state of Israel. They have not lost their motivational aspects. They've not lost their motivation, their ideology altogether, as far as the killing of Jews and Americans as they do that. And you could also see this again being mirrored within American college campuses, while you're seeing also cheering and supporting for Hamas. And so the ideology is not only contained into the Gaza Strip, it's also being exported into Europe and the United States in order to create a large mass kind of PR machine of support for Hamas and for terrorism at large. And that's part of the problem that we are indeed fighting, not only the fight on the ground, but also the PR narrative and how how Hamas is being sold or being trying to be sold as a legitimate entity when it's actually an Islamist terrorist group that needs to be eradicated altogether.
Well, Dr. Asaf, thank you so much for your expertise and detailed perspective as we were discussing this topic. So many breaking news alerts as it relates to the focal point popping up. Thank you so much for the ebb and flow and guiding the viewers as we were watching and seeing this in real time. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you as always. Take care.